Welcome back to the vlog. We're going to be playing over at Capital Casino here in Sacramento, California. Playing in the 1-3 game. Had some really crazy hands, and there's one in particular that is going to be debated about quite a bit because I'm going to ask for your feedback and see what you think about it. Anyway, let's get right into it. 1-3, $500 match the stack. Well, we start off the day with a big yawn. We haven't really played too many hands. I think this is the second hand I played in the first 50 minutes of being there. Player opens for 15, who has been playing probably more hands than his cards would suggest is optimal. I'm on the button. I got a playable hand, but I have a really good tight image at this point because I haven't played much. So I decided to 3-bet with Jack-9 suited. Basically take control of the hand and just force him off whatever he has. He decides to make the call for the $50. So it's just the two of us, of course, going to a flop with $104 in the center. Flop comes out a whole lot of nothing for him, I hope. It's 8-6-5 rainbow. So I do have a gutter and 2 overcards, but basically I have a position and I have a very good image. This looks like I have some sort of overpair. He probably has an ace-high type of hand. I decide to bet $40. He thinks for a little while before finally just giving it up, and we win a $100 pot. All right, this hand has a little bit more action than that last one. There's a $10 straddle. A player limps in for the $10, and it's folded to me in the cutoff. I have pocket tens, definitely a hand I'm going to be raising with. I make it $45. The player in the small blind, who's a fan of the vlog, he mentioned something about, he wants to be on the vlog, and he decides to put in the call for the 45. And this really entices the other 2 players. This trialer's been playing a lot of hands, and I don't think he's going to be folding this one because it looks like it's going to be a big pot. He puts in the call, and the first limper also puts in the call. They have a tighter range than most people. Flop comes out King, Queen, 10, rainbow. Pretty good flop for pocket tens. There's always a chance someone has ace jack or jack 9. But besides that, I think I like my hand, so I decided to bet $60. Probably should have gone just a hair larger than this, so I have a better SPR on the turn if everyone calls. First player does make the call, so does the second player. And of course, the third player decides $60. Looks like a pretty fair price. And they make it the call also. All right, the pot is a building. We have $423 in the middle. I got about the same amount behind. Turn card comes as a 3 of diamonds, perfect card, complete blank. It doesn't bring in any kind of flush draw. All the players check to me again. At this point, I think I'm up against a lot of pair and straight draws, so I don't want to see an ace, a jack, or a 9 come in. And with 3 opponents, I'm just going to go ahead and rip it here for $430 or so. Yeah, it's a little bit of an overbet. I think if I made my flop bet a little bit bigger, maybe instead of 60, making it 80, it wouldn't be such a big overbet, and I might get some more callers. The first player folds rather quickly. The second player takes a long time thinking about what they're going to do. They later told me that they did have a pair and a straight draw. They do decide to fold. The next player has the shortest stack, and they have a hand that they're just going to be going with, and they slide the remaining chips in. River card is another 3. I show the full house. They happen to have pocket jacks. And we got $653 headed our way. This is definitely the hand of the vlog, the week, the month, maybe even the hand of the year. I'm in the big blind with Queen Jack suited. First player limps in for the $3. Then we get a raise from the player at the end of the table who's been playing a lot of hands aggressively. To 15. I call for the 15, and so does the other player. The flop comes out the beautiful King 10-9 with 2 clubs. So we flop the nuts. I'm going to go ahead and check it over to the aggressor. The player also who limped and called, He checks it over. Now the aggressive player bets for $40, basically a pot-sized bet. I start thinking about what kind of raise size I want to be using for this flop, because it is sort of a wet board with two clubs out there and a lot of cards that could hit people. I then notice that the other player seems like he has a lot of interest in the pot. I'm not going to go into any great details of what the actual tell is here, because it's one I use and I don't think a lot of other people know it. So I'm going to keep this little secret to myself. But basically, it seemed like he really was involved and interested in this board. So I decided to just call. I expect my opponent now to put in a raise behind me. For sizing, I thought he would go somewhere between $170 and $200. Of course, I'm cheering for the bigger sizing because, hey, I got the nuts, right? Let's get more money in the pot. He announces $140, a little bit on the small side. This could indicate that he also has a very nutted hand and he's not really concerned about what the other players have. Or it could mean that he's not quite as strong as I thought he was going to be. Maybe he's just setting up a good stack to pot size for his remaining stack if both of us put in the call. The player at the end of the table tanks for a very long time. Now, if he had, say, a set or a straight himself, I feel he would be basically jamming all in and getting it heads up with this opponent, because my hand could easily look like some sort of flush draw, right? Because like I checked and I called, and then this guy raises, so he probably has a made hand. He's not raising with a flush draw. Now, if the king of clubs was say a king of spades and the nine of spades was a nine of clubs, he could have top pair and a flush draw. Then maybe he'll check raise with that. But unless this player is a total lunatic and playing super, super hyper aggressive, he's not going to be check raising with a flush draw when he's close to the action and can get a really good price to draw to it. So he has a made hand, and it's a pretty good made hand, whatever it is. Now the player in the hijack decides just to put in the call for the $100. Once he puts in the call, I think it narrows his range down quite a bit. Originally, I thought he has hands like ace, king, king, queen, king, jack, maybe a few sets in there like pocket tens or pocket kings, pocket nines are all possible. But with just a call in this position, I think that he's might even eliminate some of the ace kings and just continue with hands like king, queen, and king, jack. They're definitely a one pair type of hand and not a set and not two pair. So now it's up to me to figure out what the heck I want to do with this hand. So the first thing I'm going to be looking at is my opponent's stack sizes here. I got one opponent that has about 420 to 440 left in their stack. That's the person who check raised. The player at the end of the table has closer to 550 to 600, and I'm pretty sure he's drawing extremely thin. So I kind of want to keep him in there, but I also want to give my hand protection. The only issue I really have is the double check raise line. This is the strongest line in poker, and it's where someone bets and you flat, and someone check raises and they flat, and then you check raise the check raiser. It's always the nuts. And I've never seen anyone do this with less than the nuts. So it's a super, super strong line, and it's just going to turn my hand face up. If I jam at this point, I think I'm only going to be called by my opponent who has queen jack also, and maybe be free rolling me with something like queen jack of clubs, or maybe a queen jack that has one club and has a backdoor flush draw. I think that a lot of his two pairs are going to fold. If he happened to have a set, which I doubt because he usually raises with kings and tens and nines coming in from that position, I think that he might fold some of his two pairs, and I'm only going to get called by the strong end of his range. And the other player at the end of the table, he's definitely going to be folding any kind of king jack or king queen at that point. And I have to admit, I am a greedy bastard, so I want to get all the money from both players. My idea then becomes, okay, I flat here. My hand will look so much like a flush draw at that point. It also protects my check calling range, because who would check call twice with the nuts, right? No one's that stupid. And if my opponent bets on the turn when a blank comes, he may get called by the other opponent. And at that point, I'm going to go ahead and pounce and get all my money in and win a much, much bigger pot. All that being said, I slide in the extra $100, and we're going to go 3 ways to this turn card with $466 in the center.
One of my favorite sayings is, a bone in the mouth is better than 2 in the bush.
Whoa, Zeus. I'm not sure we're still talking about poker here. I mean, you start talking about bones and bushes, might have a different idea of what's going on. If he's talking about poker, I think he's saying it's better just to go ahead and check raise and take everything down. So before we go on, I just want you guys to think about what would be the worst possible card. I mean, out of any of the cards remaining in the deck, what is the worst possible card that the dealer could put up at this point? Go ahead. Say it out loud. It's okay. Yeah, exactly. You are correct. The 9 of clubs comes on the turn. Yes, it completes the full house. It completes the flush. It completes just about everything. Naturally, I check it over to my opponent, and he jams all in for a lot of money. In fact, it was $423.00. The opponent at the end of the table basically snap folds, and it's now on me. Of course, the first thing that goes through my mind is maybe just jamming on the flop would have been best, because then I wouldn't have to have any tough decisions. But, you know, when you play poker, you kind of want tough decisions because you might make them better than your opponent. And here I have an opportunity to save money or to make money. The question is, which one will I choose? So let's break it on down. I'm pretty sure my opponent had at least 2 pair or better when they check raised the flop. So they have some queen jacks in there, and they have a lot of king 10 suited, king 9 suited, 9-10 suited. I don't think they would be playing king 10 offsuit or king 9 offsuit with the limp in the call. I think this player is a little bit better than that, and so I'm eliminating the offsuit 2 pair combinations. And if you think about all that, there is a lot of full houses there. The 9-10, the king 9. His bluffing hands would be king 10 of spades, king 10 of diamonds, king 10 of hearts. Everything else is there, right? Since his bet size was that of a pot size bet, if I call, I'll need to have 33% equity. And according to the range that I put him on, I still have 38.7% equity. So it's a call. Or is it? I mean, I was trying to get a read off of him, of course, because when I'm in a tough spot, I use that as my tiebreaker. And I said something on the lines of, not afraid to flush get in there at all, huh? And he seemed confident. And I asked a few other questions, and he still seemed confident. Would he jam all in with a full house? I mean, if I made a full house in that spot, sometimes I wouldn't jam right all in. I might put in a smaller bet to try to get someone with a flush draw to come along. Maybe someone's unlucky enough to have a 9 in their hand and they won't be able to get away with it. Or maybe someone who flopped a straight, like me, would continue to pay him off. So his bet sizing says, I need protection, but his line says he doesn't. Then I started thinking, okay, let's say he flopped a straight with a queen of clubs or a jack of clubs in his hand. Now he's free rolling me on the backdoor flush draw. So there's 4 combinations of queen jack with a club in it, and there's 4 combinations without. So that's a 50-50. That's not so bad. And I was just in a really tough spot. And basically, I just went back to, I think he flopped 2 pair. Do I think he would jam with King 10? And I'm not sure he would, but he might jam with 10-9 of diamonds, 10-9 of hearts, because those are the most likely suited connectors that would be played this way. And I think he would think that he can get action from someone with a flush and perhaps someone with a king. So reluctantly, I decided to make the fold. And after I folded, he flashed that he had the king of diamonds in his hand. So he either had king 9 of diamonds or king 10 of diamonds. I felt it was king 9 of diamonds. I thought my play was accurate given the information, but only he really knows. I did ask him as I was leaving the table to go home for the day what he had, or whether he can make a comment on the vlog about it. He said he had king 10 in his hand. I gave him a little fist bump, just saluting him in a way of making such a creative play. About 15 minutes later, I pick up ace king offsuit. There were 2 limpers in front of me. I make it $20. The player directly behind me puts in the call for the 20. Player in the big blind puts in the 20, and one of the limpers also makes the call. So we're headed off to a flop with $84 in the center. First player checks in the dark. Flop comes out. Queen, Jack, 10. I flop the nuts again. Well, I don't think I'm going to be slow playing this at any point. So when it's checked to me, I put out a bet for $25 and get instantly raised by the player on my left to 75. The other 2 players fold out. This is pretty easy all in. He has about another $125 left in his stack. Of course, I don't jam like super fast. I make like I'm thinking about something, and then I go, all right, I'm all in. He doesn't think too long before saying that he calls, and then he slides his chips into the pot. So let's see if we hold up this time. Turn cards at 5, river is a queen, and our ace king is good. Easy peasy. After this hand, I did play for another 45 minutes, but my mind was still stuck on the queen jack of hearts hand, and I figured it wasn't a good idea to be thinking about an old hand while you're trying to play a new one. So I did pack it up, leave for the day. But I'm adding in another day here. We're playing on Wednesday the 6th, and it was a memorable day with one very memorable hand, as you shall see. There's a $6 straddle, and 2 players limp in. I look down at pocket 8s from the hijack. Going to be putting in a raise and make it a little bit larger than normal. I'll just be happy to take down the blinds and the straddles and the limps. I make it $50. I get 1 caller from the player on my right. Calling a big raise like that, he probably has a pretty decent hand, one that he didn't want to raise pre-flop. I'm thinking he probably has some medium pocket pairs, maybe some smaller ones. Flop comes 5-4 deuce with 2 spades. He checks it on over. I'm going to put in a good size bet here of $80, trying to get his flush draws to give up. He makes a quick call. So he either has a really good flush draw, or he has a medium pocket pair, maybe a set, and maybe something like 9s or 10s. He checks it over. I think there's no value in betting at this point, so I check it back. River's a queen. He checks again. I'm just going to go to showdown. He did show over pocket 7s. I kind of made a little fun with him. He's a friend of mine, so don't think I'm trying to needle him, but I just showed him my pocket 8s by laying him on top of his 7s. And we win a $276 pot to start the day. Player on the button opens for a raise to 15. I'm in the big blind with 6-5 suited. I put in the call for the 15 to protect my blinds. Flop comes 9-7-4 with 2 clubs. So we got an open ender, but there is a kind of a wet board. Shouldn't really hit my opponent's range too hard, but he bets for $25. if he bet smaller, I probably was going to check raise, but 25 was kind of a big bet. So I just put in the call and check it over to him when the king of spades comes. He checks it right on back. And of course, I smack this one right there with a 3 of hearts. I'm going big because I go pot size bet. I thought about even going bigger than that, put them all in, but people don't like to be put all in. They would rather call off 80 to 90% of their stack. He does make the call, and I take it down with a straight. Well, the game has been really quiet. We have a new player join the table. He bought in for like $1,000. This hand happened like 10 minutes after he got here. He opens for 16. I raise to 45 with ace queen offsuit on the button. He puts in the calls, just the two of us. Flop comes out really good. Queen, queen, 8 with 2 hearts. He checks it over. I'm going to make a small continuation bet here for $20. He puts in a quick call. Turn card comes is a 8 of clubs now. We make a full house. He checks it over again. I check it back. River card comes is a ace of hearts. This completes the flush, but there are 2 pair on the board. He decides to lead for $150. Okay, what could this mean? Well, obviously he could have the other queen, which is a good thing. He could have an 8, which he thinks is good at this point since I checked the turn. He could have made a flush and trying to get some thin value from someone with, say, an ace-king type of hand. So, of course, we're going to be raising here. We have nearly the nuts. I mean, he could have pocket 8s. He could have pocket aces. But other than that, we basically have the nuts. The effective nuts, you might say. So we're going to be raising here. The question is what size to use. Well, if he has a flush or a bluff of some sort, or even an ace, I think a raise would just scare him out of the pot anyway. If he has an 8, I think a big raise would probably scare him out of the pot also. If he has a queen, he's going to be calling anything, right? He's not going to be folding to even a jam. And I want the most money possible because I am a greedy bastard. And I decide to put in the jam for $575. The good news is my opponent does not snap fold. He starts to think about it. He says, I don't know if I can fold the full house to you. We have pocket aces? And I go, yeah, I didn't say anything, but yeah, pocket aces are definitely in my range. I mean, I raise pre-flop, or I 3-bet them pre-flop, bet small on the flop like I would do with aces, check the turn when there's 2 pair on there, and jammed it. Yeah, aces make sense. But all the other lines I take, it doesn't really make too much sense unless I had a queen. And if he has a queen in his hand, it's going to be really hard. I don't envy his position. So he's talking about having a full house and that he thinks that I might be making a move on him. And eventually he decides to put in a very light call. Of course, once he puts in the chips, I show my ace queen. He mucks his hand. He kind of flashed that he called me with an 8. I left shortly after this hand, and for the week, we ended up winning $1,000, a little over $1,000. And so that means our monthly total now is basically $1,000, and our yearly total is up there around 22, 23,000, somewhere in there. Zeus and I are very interested. What is better, a bone in the mouth or 2 in the bush? So if you guys can leave your feedback on that hand, I'd love to hear it. It's a lot easier to comment once you see how the hand turned out, and with the viewer saying that they had King 10 on the river. I still like my play. I know some of you would say just jam with it. You're ahead. But I always say, so let's say I flop the nuts like I did. Should I just jam on the flop? No, I think you would rather build a pot. The question is, at what point is the pot big enough for you to just go for full protection? And I think the pot was still a little bit too small to do that. it needed a little bit more. If the player betted a little bit bigger on his check raise, I probably would have just jammed then. Anyway, I appreciate you guys watching. Thank you for all your support. And until next time, good luck at the tables, and we'll see you back here soon.